Outside of the war, the way Donald Trump is taking your tax dollars and putting it into the pockets of his billionaire buddies and himself is astonishing. But we are going to make him account for everything.
If you want to know how we blew up the Trump billionaire ballroom in the reconciliation process, let me take you into the parliamentary arguments where we won. In order to get the funding through the reconciliation process, the Republicans had to give reconciliation instructions to all the relevant committees. Well, I'm the top Democrat on the Environment Public Works Committee. Martin Heinrich is the top Democrat on the Energy Natural Resources Committee. And guess what? The White House is a public building under the jurisdiction of the Environment Public Works Committee, and it's in a national park under the jurisdiction of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. And the Republicans managed not to give reconciliation instructions to either committee. So our lawyers went in, mine arguing for EPW, Martin's arguing for Energy Natural Resources, that the reconciliation was defective, could not put money to the ballroom because there was no proper instruction allowing money to go to the ballroom because of the jurisdiction of EPW and ENR. We won that argument. It was well prepared and well delivered, and it took only one day for the parliamentarian to decide that, in fact, the ballroom being added to the reconciliation bill was defective and it had to fall. So, bye-bye, billionaire ballroom.
We have an update to the $1 billion request that the president has for Congress for security, including some $220 million for security enhancements and other work that would help his ballroom project. Right now, all of that has hit a very big snag. That's the Senate parliamentarian. Her name is Elizabeth McDonough, and she has ruled that the way Senate Republicans are trying to pass this does not pass muster with the Senate's own rules. Basically, Republicans are trying to get around the filibuster in the Senate. That usually requires 60 votes. They don't have 60 votes, and they know that for this project. So what they did is they included this as part of a process called budget reconciliation, which you can pass with just 50 votes in the Senate. However, to do that, you must conform to very specific rules. And over the weekend, the parliamentarian ruled that the way Republicans have written this, it does not conform with those rules. However, it's not over. Republicans can rewrite the legislation. They're going to try again to find a way to pass this, and that could happen as soon as this week.
You know, from a legal perspective, this is a legal show, right? This is one of the most stunning stories. Todd Blanche, in a typical situation, committed malpractice here, would be disbarred. In any other situation, he was sued for basically created a $1 billion fund without filing one motion in the case. That's stunning. Not only did he not file a motion, he was given an opportunity on a cake platter to get it dismissed by Judge Kathleen Williams, who said, I don't think that I even have a case here. Go ahead and, both sides tell me whether or not I should or should not take this case. Any defense lawyer, any lawyer, we're talking about like the bare minimum of a qualified, competent lawyer would have taken that opportunity and run with it. Of course, the deadline was May 20th. So instead, Todd Blanche, acting really as Trump's personal attorney and not as our attorney, rushed this settlement. So really just the malpractice. His job, whether or not he wants to believe it or not, is representing the American people. He was told to step aside, that there was going to be a conflict of interest. He was given a memo, according to the New York Times, by career lawyers within the IRS, laying out all of the defenses, including statute of limitations, to get this dismissed, on top of Judge Kathleen Williams questioning whether or not there was even a real case or controversy since Trump was suing himself. He had so many opportunities to try to file one motion in this case. And without filing one motion, he handed over more than $1 billion to what appears to be January 6th insurrectionists. And to your point, his testimony was in front of Congress was just atrocious, trying to act as if he has no idea whether or not the money will eventually end up in the hands of January 6th insurrectionists, despite the fact he's going to be the one appointing the people on the commission who's going to be doling out the funds. Clearly, Todd Blanche here acting as Trump's personal attorney. And then we can get into the audits, which in itself, as you said, there could be worth more than $100 million. I mean, IRS policy is to audit every president and vice president. That has been a policy for years. So you get a sense of how extraordinary it is that Trump is going to be getting, and not just Trump, his sons, his businesses, his affiliates are going to be getting this favor of permanently never being audited. And of course, there is even that existing audit. Self-dealing to such an extent it is hard to comprehend, all wrapped up as if somehow it has to do with this frivolous, baseless lawsuit. And unfortunately, these Capitol Police officers who again and again have had to speak out against the lies coming from Trump and Republicans trying to rewrite January 6th are having to stand up. Thankfully, they have the ability to stand up against the slush fund, but they shouldn't have to. Really, we shouldn't be in this position.
But suffice to say, Trump's suit was unbelievably bogus. Again, you can sue anyone for anything and claim that you're entitled to however much money you want, but in that case, in the best of circumstances, a disclosure of those kind of tax returns would be limited to $1,000 per disclosure, and the statute of limitations is 2 years, which has long since elapsed. Every single other presidential candidate does as a matter of course when they run for president, and of course, which he pledged to eventually release and never did. But he was probably withholding them because he was looking down the barrel of hundreds of millions of dollars of fines related to his tax crimes, including double dipping. Crimes which he has now given himself immunity. And those crimes, and the tax crimes of his family members and businesses, were not even part of his suit against the IRS. He's just throwing them in because why not? The New York Times is reporting that the IRS actually issued a 20-page report on how bogus this suit was. This suit was a joke, and frankly, on this channel, we treated it as such because it was so stupid and so brazen. And frankly, we thought the worst that was going to come from it was that it was just going to be tossed out of court and it was going to waste taxpayer resources. My God, how wrong we were. But what became legitimately interesting is that the judge in that case realized that there was a problem. Trump was not only the plaintiff in this case, but also the defendant. He controlled the IRS and the Department of Justice. And so the judge appointed what are called amici to discuss whether there was something called a case in controversy. You can't just sue yourself. You can't collude with a friend to sue over something and get a payout when there's no real controversy and there's no adversity. And the judge correctly realized that. And because the Trump Department of Justice couldn't be trusted to actually defend that suit, they appointed an amici to discuss that particular issue. Oh, and by the way, the entire lodestone of right-wing judicial theory right now rests on what's called the unitary executive theory, which purports that there is no distinction between the president and anyone in the executive branch, which even by that particular theory meant that Trump was suing himself and absolutely could not have recovered from the public coffers from his bogus BS case.
A lawsuit was filed today to stop whatever it is Trump is doing. Trump announced that it would cost $1.8 million to do this job. Also, he had somehow just directed that expenditure as if we have the kind of government that works like that, which we don't. But today, the New York Times reports that mysteriously late last week, the amount being paid to the people he hired on a no-bid contract to paint the reflecting pool blue, that amount suddenly on Friday ballooned from the $1.8 million Trump had announced to, quote, more than 7 times that figure. The lawsuit seeking to stop the reflecting pool / swimming pool points out that that reflecting pool is on the National Register of Historic Places, which is supposed to mean something. The lawsuit filed today also says that the reflecting pool's signature dark color is a, quote, character-defining feature of the reflecting pool, and that the whole reason it's called the freaking reflecting pool is because its dark color means it reflects. It reflects, for example, the Lincoln Memorial on one side and the Washington Monument on the other side. And they don't say this, but it's implicit. Putting up little cabanas and deck chairs around it and painting it blue is never going to turn it into a swimming pool. Even though that's all you apparently understand.